afternoon, viewers. Welcome to this edition of Women Speaking, where women speak about issues that are affecting not only them, but the country, and we hear the women's perspective on these issues. Today, we want to speak about the right to bail and the various issues that human rights defenders face in this country. And I have a panel of human rights defenders and activists that will be speaking about that. And we'll mainly really talk about considering the fact that we have 2 women behind bars now over protest, which is a constitutionally given right, much as well as bail, but seeing that the reality is different, we will like to share the views of these human rights activists and what they have gone through and how they see these issues evolving. I'm going to start with Eunice Musiime. I think I'll call on you and you introduce yourself to our viewers, and then we continue. Eunice, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Agatha. Good afternoon, viewers and listeners. My name is Eunice Musiime. I'm the Executive Director of Akina Afrika. I'm a lawyer by profession, a development practitioner by practice. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this very important conversation on the situation that is pertaining right now regarding the arrest and detention of activists that are protesting the rising prices in commodities. But specifically, we are here today to speak to the issue of bail. First of all, I just wanted to state that bail has its origin in the well-established legal principle of that everyone is innocent until proven guilty, which is enshrined in Article 28 of the Ugandan Constitution. So this right to bail was really set up to ensure that we protect the innocent and the innocent. So while bail is discretionary at the instance of the court, we know that there are factors that need to be taken into account when considering an application for bail. And so some of the factors that are taken into account is the nature and the gravity of the offense, and whether the offenders are likely to interfere with witnesses, and whether they meet the requirements for bail. So in this particular case, we note that the requirements for bail were met. We also note that the nature and the gravity of offense is not that of magnitude, and that there's no likely situation that they are going to interfere with the witnesses. So for all intents and purposes, we feel, we as human rights defenders, that our sisters who are incarcerated and supposed to appear again in court on Tuesday have been unrightfully denied bail. And these principles have been established severally by different courts and in different cases. And really this is to ensure that we do not affect the liberties and freedoms of citizens. So in this particular case, you can see that the liberties and freedoms of citizens are being affected. And while we may look at this case as a one-off, we know that this is a growing trend, because a few weeks back, the opposition leader, Honorable Kizza Besigye, was also given a very high fee for bail. And so you see that it's being used while it's at the discretion of the courts, but it's being used to punish opposition members, and not necessarily just opposition members, any of those that are raising their voices on governance issues in this country. So it spells a bad it spells badly and poorly for the nation that the courts are being used to antagonize, to silence voices of reason in this country. That the courts, the judiciary, which we prized ourselves, especially us as lawyers, as that epitome of judicial independence, is being used to further political objectives, and which is wrong. So for now, I'll stop there and allow the other panelists to also come in.
So for the context to our viewers, bail has been an issue in this country for a while now, to the extent that the president has wanted it prohibited completely on several occasions, and has mentioned it on several occasions. And currently there are two, I think more than two female journalists, but notably the Soroti District Woman MP, Honorable Anne Ateke, and the Deputy Road Mayor, Doreen Nyanjura, who were arrested after protesting against also the arrest of Dr. Chiza, whose bail, like Eunice rightly said, was set high, and he further protested that. So I'm going to bring in Gloria to talk about the trend we are seeing of bail and the denial and the delayed even hearings of the bail, people's bail applications. What does it say about the human rights situation in this country? Gloria, please start by also introducing yourself some more and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Tricia Gloria Nabaye. I'm a resident researcher at the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, and also a co-host on this particular show. In regard to human rights and the right to bail and access to justice, I believe we can only do better if we actually start to look at, the things that have happened over time. We've come from a place where, one, we no longer have civic areas to protest or demonstrate. We've come all the way from the public management order, and then which also had discrepancies to engagement and to demonstration, which is also a constitutional right. And so that space was captured. And constantly we've realized, as people begin to think of ways of organizing, also the government has created a shape shift in how human rights will be more or less violated in regard to civic duty and civic rights. Now, whereas we want to believe that, bail is at the discretion of the court, President Museveni began a discourse on the right to bail and why it shouldn't be so, particularly, he said, for capital offenses. But I'm now starting to see a witch hunt on dissent. And so when we speak of human rights, we speak of issues of dealing with, curtailing dissent, while on a constant, there is arrest of opposition leaders who are found as though they are against or anti-government, as the president says it so often. But what I want to believe is that in our search for civic space and in our search to adhere to human rights, there is also pushback to dissent and pushback to these rights. And so as a trend grows, meanwhile, on top of Nyanjura and Honorable Adeke, we've added, we don't want to forget Honorable Segrinya and Honorable Sewanyana, who have also become almost a shadow, because we do not know what to do when it comes to regards to bail or to access to justice in this country, especially for opposition leaders. Today, the headline came that there was the discretion still of the court. The bail for Honorable Kizza Besigye was reduced from 30 million to 3 million. But it goes to say, if one court of justice is failing to provide, how is it that the others will adhere? And so constantly we have a cycle that abuses human rights that we need to check. But how we check it is equally going to get us into trouble. And so you find human rights defenders on a constant are in and out of jail, as and when the court decides, or as and when the power powers be decided, it also speaks to a shift in power. There was that, like I want to resound what Eunice said. There was that independence of the judiciary that was resound, that when they spoke, you'd actually tell a distinction in the arms of government. But they almost feels like there's an usurp of power where the executive makes the call. There was a time he would tell them, you need to just be dealing with chicken thieves and what. But because justice is also political, it has become almost like an entrenchment of powers from the executive within the judiciary. Another judiciary can no longer be seen as a judiciary alone, but we need to now interrogate the powers behind the authority that is experienced or the choices and decisions that are made by the courts of law. Tomorrow we return. The reasons and grounds for not granting bail to Honorable Adeke and Doreen Nyanjura, when you look at them, are not valid, and they don't even hold water. The sureties were there on time. Their IDs were verified. The LC chairman letters were equally verified. And so to think that the judge, in his consciousness, decided that they will not get bail was almost, I can't say free and fair, but almost a slap in the face to justice. Because the writing was on the wall that if all the procedures had been followed, these people were supposed to be out on bail. But because of the political notes of the things that are happening in this country, we can no longer think of human rights as just inherent, but as a tool the government will use to curtail dissent and to gag, to gag political opponents. But also prices must fall is a collective action point. I want to believe that we are all feeling the pinch of our economic crisis, but most so the disappointment in the fact that our government has no solutions to the issues that be. And so when you have people that most probably, represent the voices of the masses, stand up to rise, they weren't even protesting beyond the reasonable. I mean, they were standing in just a place and having, placards and a megaphone to let people know we need to have a voice on these things. And so we feel it, it's a collective, it's a collective concern. We feel it, we hear it, we are living through these times. And so from the negation of that, I want to believe that even the judicial, I don't know if they feel that pinch as we do, but even the judiciary should be in position to understand that the times have changed and voice must be put to these times. So constantly, as we fight for human rights, we need to remember the need for voice and agency, how we need to reframe ourselves, revolve around the issues, and be able to, stand ground, but then also be able to see that our human rights, if not fought for, will be abused to totality. And we will have a point where people can no longer have a voice or a say in the things that they do. I want to end there for now and let other panelists have a say in this.
Thank you, Gloria. I'm going to ask Becky if she's on. I hope she is. Yeah, to talk us through the right to bail. Is it a fallacy? We have a constitution that stipulates it, but time and again we have had these issues of people denied bail because, as Eunice stated, there's a presumption of innocence, and which is the basis for someone being granted bail until they are proven guilty. But in your experience, is it a fallacy? Is it something we can pride ourselves in knowing that no, we have a right to bail that we are entitled to, considering the circumstances? Becky, please, you could start by also introducing yourself to the viewers.
Thank you, Agatha. I am Rebecca Turyatunga Juna. I am a young woman activist and the founder of Juna Foundation, and we work towards rehabilitation of children that are in conflict with the law. I want to believe that at this point, if an MP can fail to get bail, how about a local person? How about the women at the grassroots? it speaks volume. It speaks volume to where we are going as a country. And the issues that the member of parliament, the woman member of parliament, Honorable Anne Adeke raised, it's within her mandate as a leader of her people to be able to address their concerns, because when they're campaigning, they say that we send us, we shall speak for you, we shall be the voice for the voiceless. The prices and how they affect women is different. The high prices have increased the vulnerability of women to GBV, increased the poverty levels, and widened the inequality gap. And within her mandate, she was doing what was right. If you've gone to parliament and nothing is being done, and you have to go to the street to remind people that, hey, the people already have said this and this, and as their voice, I am representing it. Then you are arrested, and then you go to prison, and you cannot afford bail. It is something that is sad, because it shows you the daily struggles of the grassroots person. Because you saw Dr. Kiss raised 30 million for bail. No, that Honorable Anne Adeke was within her mandate, to protest the prices, because as a leader of her community, she has to voice the concerns of her community. And if she has gone to parliament and nothing has been done, then she has to find other avenues. But I also want you to imagine a scenario where a member of parliament cannot be able to afford bail or get bail, and compare that to the local person and their access to bail. Do they even know that bail is there? And if they are going to get it, how much are they charged? Because you see that for current Dr. Kiza, they were asking for 30 million, and it has been reduced to 3 million. Now, imagine a local person that has been asked for 3 million in this tough time. I think we need, as a country, we need to revise, how we are functioning, and give back the power to the people to be able to freely express themselves and also enjoy their constitutional rights. Because I didn't see, a lot of people that had, the honorable and also the Dr. They were not destroying things or banning things. We just don't have to keep arresting people. We just now have to listen to what the people have to say and adjust accordingly, and also be able to offer, timely decisions, and so that we can calm down the pressures of the people. Because with the high prices, it's affecting everybody. The high prices is affecting everybody, the human rights activists, the women, and for the women, it is so bad because it's rendering them more vulnerable to GBV and increase their poverty levels and even widen the inequality gap. And if we are saying we would like as a country to achieve SDGs 1, 2, and 5, I believe if we are not listening to the women representatives, then we are not doing much. But also on the political side, the arrest of people like Honorable Anne Adeke, it affects women, urge and to join politics, because to be scared, because of such. How do I? There's pressure from the constituency, to resolve certain issues. But then there's also pressure from the law enforcement and the justice system not to voice these issues. So most of the women with these arrests will shy away from political spaces, which will hinder their decision making. So this has a long-term effect. The lack of bail to women leaders has a long-term effect on the participation of women in politics. Thank you, Agatha.
Thank you, Becky. And yes, you talk of this deterring women from joining politics or making them shy away from participating in these political activities. And it's the question I had in mind to ask Eunice. Eunice, as a leader of a women's organization that fights for women's rights, how do these issues, the ones we are looking at now, the right to bail and how it is being handled in this country, and also how much one is required to pay for bail, how do they exactly affect women that want to participate in the political activities of this country?
Thank you, Agatha, and thank you, Becky and Tricia, for your thoughts. I add my thoughts as well in saying that the governance situation in Uganda is definitely restricting participation of women in politics and in governance. I'm glad that we're on Civic Space TV. Issues of civic space affect women more negatively because women would tend to shy away from any violent space. And if each time a woman speaks out or protests against an issue that is not just affecting women, but is affecting the general populace, which women are concerned about, it means that then women are going to shy away from these spaces and recoil back to spaces of safety. So the shrinking civic space in Uganda, the acts that we are seeing where the state is acting excessively in responses to being questioned over, say, commodity prices, is an issue for us as promoters and champions of women's rights, because we know that it's going to take us back towards where we were. They say that the pandemic has caused reversals in women's rights to at least 10 years. And so this also, I would say, is something that is going to definitely contribute to reversal of women's rights in terms of women's political rights, women's participation and issues of governance, because then we begin to self-censor ourselves, we will not speak out on issues that matter. So you'll find that there are just a few women who are able to speak out, who are able to be courageous, to speak out on issues that matter. Then secondly, women will retreat to safe spaces. Women will not participate in any form of protest because then, and I'm sure the government knows this, and that's why they are responding with excessive force so that they can deter any other women to protest, or any other women and girls, I would say. So it deters that kind of participation, but it's also sending a message to the wider population that anytime you come out to challenge the state, this is the response that you are going to receive. So it's not just deterring women and girls, it's deterring the general population who will say, if Honorable Anna Deke can be arrested, the Deputy Lord Mayor can be arrested, Colonel Kiza Besige, Honorable Segnya is still in prison. So how many people are going to come out and speak out? And so for us as women rights activists, voice and agency is an important component of the work that we are doing. And so we are seeing that the state is now muting those voices, silencing those voices, and therefore women will not be able to exercise the agency that they had acquired. And so it reverses a lot of the work that we had done.
Thank you, Eunice. Thank you very much. Yes, I can imagine, because surely the women who have children to look after will fear to risk going on the streets or anywhere if they know that they will have, there's a potential of spending a month or two in jail. Gloria, I would like to ask you, what do you think the problem is? We have laws that provide for many things in this country, apart from just bail and other rights. Where does the problem come from? What problem are we dealing with as a country when it comes to human rights, and specifically the right to bail?
I think looking at the right to bail in negation to every other thing that is happening within the country, paints a small picture of a grand scheme of things happening. More than just the right to bail, it is in the shrinking or the the reduction in justice within the country. It could be in land issues, it could be in any other case before the courts of law. It could be in the backlog that is, talking the court to bail is a compendium of a lot of other things that are happening that have drowned the justice system within this country. And when we speak of justice, we only speak of it in regards to, because in the moment we know these human rights defenders, these, women leaders represent a constituency within our society. But there are also voices that were with them that most probably will never go noticed, because in the crowd there are people that sometimes are buried within the system. I know for a fact during the election season there are a lot of opposition youth, women, girls, and men who ended up in jail, are still in jail, have disappeared. We do not know their whereabouts, but they were taken. They were arbitrarily arrested, and they've never seen the day of justice. They've never seen the day of light. And so there are also those that are rotting within the system. And so when we speak of the right to bear, we only speak of a small component of, issues within the justice system that need to be addressed. But I also want to be alive to the fact that I think, just to piggyback on what Eunice said, it's communicating something, it's language. I keep telling people, as the times change, the language within the governing systems is equally going to change. And so while we are imagining that democratic societies uphold rights like bail, uphold rights like, access to justice, we are also conversant of the fact that we are not in the times of democratic process as it should be, but as it is happening in Uganda today. And so when we speak of these things, I don't want us to negate ourselves outside of the environment that is being created, or even the narrative that is being shaped. The times have changed, that we can no longer have voice over some things. And so as we push for voice and agency, we need to interrogate the things that continue to remind us that you might have a right to say what you have to say, but like in Idi Amin's time, you might not have a right after what you've said.
Becky, you are an activist out there. And so I'd like for you to tell us the dangers of female activists in those jails or detentions or wherever they are. Because recently there's social media was awash with photos of a certain woman who was tortured and some say even sexually assaulted. I would like you, Becky, to tell us what has been your experience with that now women not only are at a risk of going to jail, but also what happens to them in those detentions. Do you have an idea?
Thank you, Agatha. One of the things that going to prison does is take you away from your family and the support system. So you will have to start afresh building the support system within the prison, and that is emotionally it takes a drain on you. Whereas some have a good experience of rehabilitation, others do not have a good experience. What happens between arrest and incarceration? Those are two different things. The justice system is a very long one. Also being there and you are in a new space and you're not in your comfortable bed, it takes a toll on you emotionally, and it affects one's mental health, and how you relate with people. It does have an impact. The stigma that arises around people that have been in jail, as a community, we still have that stigma that so and so was in jail. So even when you're getting visas, there is a form where you feel if you've ever been in prison, so already you have a tag on you for a very long time, even when you are trying to access borders. So that is it itself is 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 is, is is what is covering your area of reach is, affecting you. Your travel is affected, your mental health is affected, your family is affected, and also the other wider community is affected. However, what happens in these prisons is, I don't know if any of you have been arrested when you're in your period. It's a different feel for women. For women, it's different. Access to justice and being in prison for women is different because you have to have sanitary pads. If you get an infection, what you do, and imagine you've been arrested without any pads, and we know that menstruation can happen due to stress. Can get menstruation, and if you've been in a police cell, it's not the cleanest place to be. So health-wise, that also affects you. Now, physically, we have seen that, and we have known that quite often, people that have come out of prison have said, they're safe houses. We have seen Andrew Mena say they are safe houses. So, what happens to those that are taken to safe houses? What happens to those that are taken to prison? And the rehabilitation process, the reintegration process of after coming out of the prison and being integrated back to society. Somebody thinks you're just supposed to pick up the pieces and go. No, it has an effect. You have to be able, to be able to come back to society and, catch up with the missing time. For example, an honorable member of parliament, the few days she is in prison, Honorable Anna Deke, she has to now catch up with what other members of parliament have been able to do, and see what has a community missed out in maybe in the budget and all that. So it has an effect on one's work too and their society. And that fight is never the same. It's behind closed doors. It's never the same. And I believe that if one gets out of prison, they need to see a therapist, to be able to fix the pieces. And if we cannot address the mental health aspect of that, then I think the life in prison moves along with the person that has been in prison. Thank you, Agatha.
Thank you, Becky. Eunice, I want to get back to you with the question about way forward, especially in the case of the two women that are currently in jail. What are we supposed to do as women, as women's activists? What can be done by the organizations that you lead or in individual capacity? What is the strategy?
I would like to see to create spaces for us to speak regarding these issues and not take it for granted that our voices do not matter. Our voices do matter. So we need to do the opposite of what the state wants us to do. The state wants to silence us and not speak and begin to self-censor ourselves. So it's important that we create more and more of these spaces to speak to the issues that matter, to speak to the governance situation in Uganda. We also need to continuously have conversations as citizens and not look at issues in silos. The fact that activists are being arrested is really a governance connections, and continue to make those connections. I've seen that when a critical mass is speaking to an issue, then there's some sort of a pushback that helps to achieve certain things. But ultimately, it's to continue doing the work that leads to a better governance situation in this country. And so we should not tire of envisioning a better Uganda. We should not tire of working towards a better Uganda. We should not tire of continuously pockets of change in this nation that would definitely lead to seeking to achieve. So thank you to CCG that a space like this was organized for us in the immediate to say something and speak to this issue, but then more and more space will also be organized to ensure that we are not silenced. The worst that can happen in quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice. Gloria, if you are on, I would like you to also weigh in on that. Eunice talks about continuous engagement, but we have seen that we don't have many women that are out there, and it could be because of the issues that we already talked about earlier. How do we, as women, or ensure that women are participating regardless of what we are up against?
Thank you very much, Agatha. I think our first stop will be to go to LDC tomorrow and stand in solidarity with the women. While people negate the role of pressers, I believe the women's voice has always been, solid whenever we stand as a unit, and more or less we've been heard. And so mine is not a call different from Eunice, but that we continue to use the spaces that we have to make our voices heard, so that we thrive around community, and to be able to have urgency around the issues that are happening within our communities. And then two, I think we need to start to also ask the hard questions. Why isn't government doing anything about the issues that are happening in this country? Why isn't there an immediate solution, an interim solution, and a long-running solution? The more we interrogate these questions, the more we are calling government to account and to be able to provide a direction for this country. As we go into the budget week soon, I want to believe that the voice of the women should be key and priority, it being heard before, even after the budget is read. But more importantly, that we continue to bring ourselves within community so that we know what's happening and how we can do differently. Then lastly, I don't want to take in vain the efforts of Honorable Adeke and Nyanjura and the other lady that they were with, because that is a starting point. Even Nana Afrika, that is our starting point. The revolution will have women in it at the forefront, shaping the narrative. I want to believe we have the voice to be able to cause change. And if we continually organize well, we can be the change that we are desiring for this country. Our voices do matter and do count. Every other time action is created, I believe reaction will come from the government, regardless of that, what it looks like. I also want to call upon human rights defenders, all those that defenders, to constantly provide legal aid and legal support. I want to thank them for the initiatives they've done so far, but that we have, speed dial defense mechanisms for our human rights defenders, so that we do not have anyone lost in count or disappeared. So I want to interrogate how we can be able to help them, those who are detained, those who have obtained bail, and also those who have disappeared, so that we have an account of where the women that are at the forefront are, and how better we can serve them in the effort of pushing for our human rights and also our urgency. So going forward, we will still work as women, because that is our collective effort. We will continue to create spaces where we can interrogate the issues that are happening within our communities. But we cannot do it without women. So we continually want to invite women to these causes. Please come to LDC and support the women and stand in solidarity with them. The numbers count for something, because the people that we are speaking to will not only listen to one voice, but will listen to the voice of the majority. Yeah, I think that is the urgency we need to stand in going forward. Thank you, Agatha.
Thank you, Gloria. Yes, and I'm going to and ask Becky to expound on that. You mentioned asking the hard questions, asking government the hard questions on the situation. That would make it look like maybe what we already knew, that the problem of this country that creates all these human rights abuses that we are seeing is probably governance. Becky, what can we do to resolve the governance issue, where you have actually people that have violated rights and they go scot-free, those who have beaten up activists or protesters, for that matter, where you have a magistrate who gets up and sets bail at 30 million because, which even they know is outside the law. Is there a way we can, as women, but also as Ugandans, think of addressing the root cause of this problem?
Thank you, Agatha. One of the things I will say is that I believe Ugandans are comfortable. Because if Ugandans were uncomfortable, they would have found strategies to resolve some of these things. If you decide to be silent about issues that affect your life, then you do not expect government to prioritize you. It is important to fight openly, come together to advocate for not only our rights but the rights of others, and also to voice our concerns to the leadership that the things that do affect us. Because if you wake up and say, well, last time I went and nothing happened, and you keep quiet, it means that you have submitted to silence. But also silence is a form of revolution. Silence is also a communication of of tiredness. So I also believe that Sudan, some are tired, and they're not seeing, a way forward and a way through. However, I will recharge different, activists, different women, young women activists, feminists, those that do write to write, those that can think, those that do sports, those that use music, dance and drama, poets and artistic person to to continue with the passion and speak truth to power and challenge the status quo in different ways, because if speaking silences you, then you can draw, you can use art, you can use music, you can write. However, it cannot only be one person always fighting all the time. Sometimes you get drained emotionally, mentally, financially. So it means we need to build a cadre, the people that are human rights activists, the people that are women activists, to build a cadre of young activists to mentor them and have an intergenerational linkage, because we are seeing that Dr. Messenger has been there for how long? It's sad to see his uh, people he has mentored. They're in government. If you look at the deputy speaker and the speaker of parliament, these are all his mentees. If he had mentored them well, they would be speaking up. So also we need to look at the way we mentor our people and our mentees and how we do a follow-up, because they were the voiceless, and also standing up for people like Anna Adeke, but we are not having that. So I believe that there is a gap in our mentorship, and thus it needs to improve. We need to sit back on ground and re-strategize and have a strategic plan of engaging with government, not only in terms of asking for what is due for the people, but also to supplement its effort in the work that it's doing, so that we do not look like we only government. But when government has done something that is right, we can say, okay, this is right and this is what is supposed to be done. Okay, do it the same way, do other things the same way you were supposed to do the other. So we have to have like a deep and good relationship with government, because there are good people out there in the government that are willing to do good things, and we cannot always come at them harshly. Let us celebrate the ones that are doing bad, provide a good one, bad one. But in the meantime, we have to call the civic acting. We cannot expect, President always be the voice of Uganda and so the opposition leaders. So you find that the parliament is full of people from the NRM. How many have come out to see the prices affecting their people? And these are people voted by the Ugandans. Are those people not caring about other people, or the people they represent are not voicing their concerns. So it's a three-way now street: the leader, the government. Time we can use the different spaces that we have, to advocate, to lobby, and keep the fire burning. Thank you.
Gloria, I would like you to step in. We want to conclude this conversation, but Becky talks about Ugandans being comfortable and talks about mentorship. Do you believe it's a problem of mentorship? I have been in that position where I have wanted to rally people behind something that we all thought we were aggrieved by, but it didn't. I didn't succeed. And you also talk about collective efforts. We don't see much of that. Do you also think it's a problem of a lack of mentorship, or is there another issue we are dealing with as far as coming together and fighting for our rights is concerned?
Thank you, Agatha. I think it's not lack of mentorship per se, though mentorship would be a very good point to also have, or a solution to where we are. But what I see is apathy more than a problem of mentorship. When you've been beaten for so long, you can only but sit and just take in the lashes at some point in time. So more than, comfort, it's not that Ugandans are comfortable, but that there is a living, cloud of apathy that sweeps us. And if you want to actually, interrogate it deeper, you would look at the way Ugandans, deal with, backlash or the intricacies that come out of parliament or even of our government. When you look at issues of, a whole Ministry of Health, losing billions of COVID funds, and the explanation doesn't stand up to the day. And the only way Ugandans can receive that is through sarcasm, through comedy. And so much of our apathy is outlived in community through laughter. And so more than failure of mentorship, because the youth are there. And if you want to test, the ability of Ugandans to cause change, we would begin with interrogating what happened at the NRM primaries and what happened in the subsequent wave that took over, the central region in the previous elections. And it's not that we are without action, but that while a lot of Ugandans would dare to act, the consequences and the way life has been shaped is that you're dragged through the apathy of our systems to a point where your voice is stifled. So going forward, more than mentorship, we need to think of, I don't know how to check our resilience out of, this long drag of apathy, but then also to create pockets of hope, because we need to hope that that things can change. I know very many Ugandans who have, resigned. They've signed out of civic action. They've signed out of civic duty. And there's a drag of it is what it is. And constantly you find yourselves in a wave of whoever can do something, please do. Because for us, we are fast spent. And we are coming out of a pandemic. And then we are having an economic crunch. And so you're having people that have been tested with their mental resilience, but also tested in their financial resilience. So more than anything, instead of going to the streets to fight, I'll do everyday living so that I can be able to survive and to get on with the day. And so what I know for a fact is, as time goes by, as people keep, pushing hard and pushing on, obviously there's going to be an outburst. Do we want to wait for an outburst? Certainly not, because that is when civic engagement is a good thing. That is when, civic protests, civic demonstrations are good, because they check the excesses that are within society and they deal with the pressures that they give citizens a gap or a chance to air out their issues. But in presence or in the absence of such a thing, you will find yourself with a citizenry that will burst. And unfortunately, the burst is not a good thing. It might cause not only a topple, but a loss of lives. So going forward, more than mentorship, we need to think of creating pockets of hope and also creating avenues and spaces for conversation so people can have outlets to the different things that hold them in apathy. But then also there is good in hearing yourself speak to the issues that you're dealing with so that you find solutions within your community. But also, I want us to start to look at solutions from community other than government. While three people may not be able to achieve it, why I speak of collective action is I do not want us to sit and wait for government to clean the streets of Namgongo after Matters Day. That would be, giving away our civic duty and our civic responsibilities. But I want us to come as a community to be able to first hold ourselves accountable and deal with the issues that, suffer us in the community before we even look to government, as much as government is a custodian of our money and responsible for making sure that citizens are well. But within our communities, let's start to find solutions. Let's use Ubuntu to address some of the issues within our community. There are children within our community we can take care of. There are women within our community we can take care of. COVID taught us that we are more of a village than we are separate together, because everyone cared enough to make sure that their neighbor ate something if they had the ability to. So that is why I speak of collective action. Before we go to government, can we as a people pull together as Ugandans, be able to create solutions within our systems so that even in the absence of a government, we can thrive as a community? I have seen the work Rotaries do. I've seen the work Niginas do, those community financial institutions. And so if we can have collective pools of energy, of effort, of voice, of urgency, perhaps we will change the narrative of where we are, or even make just progress enough for us to keep on going, to keep on living, and to keep on hoping. I beg to end there for now.
Thank you, Gloria. Very, very interesting vision, because I entirely agree with you. Apathy is the word. I have people who say they don't even believe in conversations like this because they say, what will they change? They can't change anything. And also maybe speak of survival. People are going to do things they don't believe in because surviving in this country has become very hard. So we really have a big task ahead of us if we are to change what is happening. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for now. We can always discuss apathy and these other issues that are interfering in this fight against human rights violations some other time. But I'm going to ask both of you to give your parting shots on these issues, on the issue of human rights violations, on the right to bail, and on the incarceration, the current incarceration of Honorable Anna Deke and Doreen Nyanjura. We close this. Becky, are you still online?
Yes, I am, Agatha. Thank you. I believe that we all have a role to play to ensure that justice is served. I call upon the women to speak up for the women that are incarcerated, and also to ensure that bail is reduced with the prices. It's quite expensive, and that to remind all those stakeholders that at some point in life you're going to need to access that bail. So put yourself in Honorable Anna Adeke's shoes. Put yourself in the shoes of the grassroots women, and if you would be able to afford it without biases. But I also want to wake the young women that it's time for action, to voice the concerns of our people and ourselves, especially around prices, and to also put a call to, to the president of this country, that remind him that these prices, yes, we need a tangible solution, because the prices are increasing the poverty among women, and they are increasing GBV and violence against women and girls, and thus and widening the inequality gap. Therefore, there will not be achievement and attainment of SDGs 1, 2, and 5. But also this is going to affect the parish development model. So as long as the prices are up, the parish development model is not going to work. So we need solutions from the president, who is the leader of this country, in regards to these prices. They'll also need that there is justice, and ask Parliament to say something about their member of Parliament being in prison. There has been a lot of silence about Honorable Anadeke being in prison from the members of Parliament and the Parliament. The silence is so loud. Thank you so much, Agatha, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Becky. You have made wonderful submissions on this show, and we all hope that through these submissions, we can, eventually see some changes happen. Gloria, your last remarks on this?
Yeah, thank you, Agatha. I think we need to go out there and show solidarity to the ladies tomorrow. That is my call for action. May the women show up in their numbers, in their variety, in their intergenerational characteristics, the young, the old. Let's show up and be in solidarity with the ladies. I think by the time this show airs, their court session will have happened at 10 a.m. And so I'm really going to, call to us beyond now and even after to, push to make sure that justice still reigns in this country, but then also to make sure that not another woman has to be denied bail, as long as we can fight and we can stand and we can have voice over it. And so it's our call to action to continually push for solidarity, to push for the right for bail, but then also to push for access to justice within Uganda. If we lose justice, we lose the whole system. We lose the country as it is. So let's gather together. Let's go together. I will be there at court at 10, and we'll be able to see what the proceedings are and what the state takes on, what other role the state will take on, or what other action the state will take on. But I want to thank you also for joining us in these conversations. They are very important because they help us shape narratives that it is not normal for a person to have all the requirements for bail and still not get bail, that it shouldn't be the norm, and we should call it out where we can. Thank you, Agatha.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Becky. And Eunice, I think, hasn't been able to stay with us till the end. But thank you very much. This conversation has been very rich. And I hope that we continue this, because especially because of the fact that we have had issues with other platforms where women seem to be left out. And we really, I also appreciate and I'm grateful that this platform where we don't just share issues affecting us as women, but also we give our view on other important matters that shape this country. Thank you very much, ladies, for being with us today. And thank you to our viewers. We will have women speaking again next week to continue with the debate about how to make things better for the people of this country, but especially for the women. Thank you.